So we're going to talk about Genesis 25 through 28, which is really Jacob. And it is a story of his destiny, his deception, and his departure. That's a kind of a quick and dirty way to look at it. Probably what I'm going to do, kind of two things, is I'm going to do a kind of a flyover view of what's happened. Pick a, kind of pop in, pick a verse that matters, talk about that a little, move on. So I'm not going to do any detailed teaching on any one particular, but then at the end I will be diving into an analysis that's on the paper. So that's going to be kind of more at the end. Okay, so everybody enjoy reading about a dysfunctional family?
Made you feel better about yours, didn't it?
It did. It's, and I think you said it best, it's kind of a soap opera. It's like, oh, that's where they got the idea for this plot, from Isaac's family. So let's jump in there. So there is this key verse, and we need to remember this throughout the story of Jacob, is Genesis 25:23. So as you recall, Rebekah was barren for 20 years. Isaac prayed, she became pregnant. It was an uncomfortable pregnancy, even on the scale of pregnancies. And so she sought the Lord, and this is what the Lord told her. And the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other, the older shall serve the younger. Now what we need to reflect on this is, yes, this is a very personal thing about Jacob and Esau. But it is also, it doesn't say 2 man-childs, 2 people, it says 2 nations. So you want to, as you read further and you look at the conflict between national Israel and national Edom, those conflicts are prophesied by God right here. And we will actually see later on in Exodus and Numbers and 2 Samuel and 2 Kings that Edom does submit. It isn't just Esau and Jacob that this is about. This is about nations. And the Bible affirms this. This is one of those prophecies that comes about that makes some scholars say, well, clearly this had to be written later. Because how could they have been so accurate in the prophecy? And to which we who believe in a supreme, supernatural God go, because God. So yes, there is the Jacob does get the blessing preferentially, but we'll read later when, I think it's either next week or the following week, it's either in week 2 or 3, that Jacob actually bows to Esau. So this isn't total, and when Jacob and Esau reunite after Jacob's been in Haran, Esau comes with 400 men, and Jacob comes with his kids and his sheep. I don't know, I think 400 guys is stronger than some sheep. Just saying. It's my defensive strategy. I wouldn't pick a herd of sheep. And I don't mean figurative sheep, I mean literal sheep. So this isn't necessarily, yes, it is playing out. It's also, I think I talked about it in another study, but this idea throughout Genesis and even later in the Bible of the younger being preferred. So we see it's the line of Seth, not the line of Cain. It's the line of Shem, not the line of Ham. David is the youngest, not the oldest. So we see all throughout the Bible, time and time again, Isaac, not Ishmael, that it is the younger, for whatever reason, God chooses to hold this covenant line. And great thing about the Jacob story is we know it is grace. It is nothing he has done. It is that, yeah. So here we see this, but I think as you continue to read this, keep this in mind. This is just something to keep in mind as you go through the rest of this story, but also as you read later the stories of Israel, particularly going up to the period of First and Second Kings. So the boys were born, and then there's this story that talking about the boys, and this is about the character of the boys and the character of the parents. So in 2 short verses, the Bible is so concise in what it's saying, but in this we get a character study of Esau, of Jacob, of Isaac, and Rebekah. Boom, 2 verses. When the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, while Jacob was a quiet man dwelling in the tents. They were twins, but they were very different personality. Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game. And this becomes, Isaac here gets this long, it isn't just he loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. It's he loved Esau because he ate of his game. So we see that there is favoritism within the family. The parent, so for those of you who have children, don't have favorites. Doesn't end well. Creates conflict and tension, as we will see. Because he ate of his game. And that becomes the writer of Genesis is cluing us in to how this becomes, this idea of food and game becomes kind of a motif that plays out from Genesis 25 to the end of Genesis 27. So we'll see it play out a lot in these chapters. You might have noticed it. Okay, and here's the first time it starts playing out. It's not about Isaac, but it is about Jacob. Once, so I'm now jumping ahead to Genesis 25:29. Once, when Jacob was cooking stew, Esau came in from the field because he was a man of the field, and he was exhausted. And I can imagine he's out in the heat. It's the Middle East. It's going to be hot. He would have worked, and he was tired. But he was not dying from starvation. Let's put this in context. He'd had a long, hard day, maybe a couple days, but he wasn't dying of hunger. He just wanted his meal. And Esau said to Jacob, "Come, let me eat of some of that red stew, for I am exhausted." And this is the clue, therefore his name was called Edom. So Esau, in his birth, he's kind of a redhead, he's very ruddy, and the word Edom means red. So Esau is the progenitor of all the Edomites. Jacob said, "Sure," but Jacob is smart, but not in a good way. So Jacob sees, oh, I'm sitting here with an advantage. I'm not just going to give this away. Again, neither brother comes out great. Jacob just comes out better. Because both brothers have heard the prophecy. Do not pretend that Rebekah got that word from God. The younger shall serve the older, and she stuck it away on a little piece of paper and meditated on it quietly. Everybody in the family knew this word. And Jacob's thinking, okay, there's a little bit of, I'm going to help God. There's a little bit about, oh, the seed was planting that I can. Have you ever known if something's so far out of reach, you can't get it, you really don't kill yourself getting it? Like, I'm never going to be president of the United States, so I don't spend a lot of work trying to get there. Right? But if there is something you can have, maybe it's not expected, but suddenly it's like, oh, wait, that is within reach. God said I could have that. And suddenly now you're working really hard to get it because, well, it's obtainable. both in the natural and in when God brings you a word. I think, God, honestly, I'll tell you what, I think that's why God is cautious about the words he tells us about our destiny, is because he's like, if I tell them, they will do everything to achieve it, and then I won't get the glory because I'm God. And that's the one thing God is very jealous about, is his glory. So, but Jacob knew this now. So he said, sell me your birthright. And Jacob says, I'm about to die. What use is tomorrow to me now? Because the birthright is something in the future. A birthright will only happen when our father dies. Why do I care about it? And one of the things, if we fast forward to the book of Hebrews and that hall of faith, one of the things that the author of Hebrews tells us time and time again, what makes their faith so strong, is some of them even died before what they were hoping for was realized. They were hoping for, their hope was the Messiah, their hope was the resurrection, their hope was something in the future. Abraham died before he was a father of many nations. He even knew, I'm never going to receive it, but I'm going to believe with my one son, Isaac, that it's going to happen. But Esau didn't have that perseverance. And Jacob said, swear to me now. So he sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose and went on his way. I filled my belly. The things of my appetites I place more than the promises of God. And the writer of Genesis is pretty clear. Thus Esau despised his birthright. And that's a pretty hard word. He despised it. Again, Esau, never think of Esau as the victim in this story. Esau set himself up. He was driven by, just like his father, he was driven by his appetites. And then chapter 25 ends with this interesting statement. When Esau was 40 years old, he took Judith, the daughter of Beri the Hittite, to be his wife, and Basma, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and they made life bitter for Isaac and Rebekah. If you recall that Abraham made his servants swear that he would not let Isaac take a wife of the Canaanites. The Hittites are, if we go back to the Table of Nations in Genesis 10, the Hittites are Canaanites. So Esau knew this was about the family. And this isn't that God hated the Canaanites, but God is going to have the people of Israel dispossess the land from the Canaanites. So intermarriage isn't going to work there, is it? And this is not in the notes, so don't even look for it. This is extra. That if you jump ahead, this begins what scholars call, and it's a fancy word, called an incluso. And think of that as a bookend. So at the end of 25 or 26, sorry, I've jumped ahead to 26. The end of Genesis 26 is this thing about Esau taking these wives, the Hittites. And that if you jump ahead to 28, right after Isaac blesses Jacob, it goes, and Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him away to take a wife from there, and that as he blessed him, he says, you must not take a wife from the Canaanite women, and that Jacob had obeyed his father and mother and gone to Paddan Aram. So Esau saw that the Canaanite women did not please Isaac, his father. That's an inclusive. This reference to Isaac and Rebekah being displeased by Esau's wife, and this Esau recognizing it. So think of them as two bookends of the story. So what the author is telling you is that this unit between there's a big narrative happening. And what's the narrative that happens from the end of 26 to the middle of 28? It is the deception around the blessing, the scheme to get Jacob away, Isaac blessing Jacob legitimately and openly, Jacob leaving. So that is a major section of narrative 27. Okay, so we will now jump into that major section of narrative. Oops. So it starts in 27. Sorry, I am jumping around. I apologize.
It's easier to follow in the Bible.
Okay,
It
so
doesn't
I am
follow
now
that.
in Genesis 27, 1 through 4. When Isaac was old and his eyes were dim, so that he could not see, Isaac is blind, he called Esau his older son and said to him, "My son." And he answered, "Here I am." And if you recall, we have taught on this "here I am," and it's Hinene, and the literal translation of it is "behold me." So there's a little bit of a play. You're blind, behold me. And he said, "Behold, I am," and there's actually, I'll talk about it a little bit more later. "Behold, I am old. I do not know the day of my death." Hint, hint, he doesn't die for another 20 years. Spoiler alert, as you read forward, Jacob leaves, goes to Haran, has 2 sets of wives, serves 14 years, serves another 6 years, comes back and buries his father. 20 years. So Isaac, I think, for whatever reason, I can understand. He's gone blind and he's just given up on life. So he says, "Now take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out into the field and hunt game for me and prepare for me delicious food, such as I love, and bring it to me that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die." There's 2 things, and I'll point it out again later. But one of the things that I think is starting to be, the author of Genesis is trying to point out here, is to make a comparison between Isaac and Abraham. What Isaac is about to do in blessing Esau is in direct contravention to the word of God that he received through Rebekah. The younger shall serve the older. So by saying, "I'm going to give the blessing to Esau, even though I know God wants me to give it to Jacob," he is being disobedient. If we think of, though, the first time the word love is used in Genesis, it is when God comes to Abraham and says, "Abraham," and Abraham says, "Hinene, here I am." And God says, "Take your son, your only son, who you love, and sacrifice him on Mount Moriah." That's the first occurrence of love. And here, in a twisting of that, to remind, I believe Isaac is failing the test his father passed. And at the end of that, God said, "And now I know you love me more than your son." And right now, what we will see in Isaac's actions is he loves Esau because he fills his belly with meat and good stew, food I like. You satisfy my appetites more than I love God. Isaac becomes this amazing example for us of living in the flesh. We will say it's cool. And I talked about at the end of the last study that Isaac's footprint in the Bible is so small compared to his father and his son. So for all their faults, for all of Abraham's faults and Jacob's faults, and quite frankly even Joseph's faults, they loved God. In the end, when push came to shove, they just depended on God. And Isaac right here is trying to contravene that. And I got to pick up the pace, or we're not going to get done today. So let's talk about Genesis 27. And rather than exegeting it, we're going to look at the 4 main characters. The 4 main characters in chapter 27 are Isaac, Rebekah, Jacob, and Esau, right? So let's look at this through them. What's wrong? Because Genesis 27 is a chapter of something going wrong. It is not a great chapter. This is not Genesis 22. This is a different story. So here we see, first of all, Isaac knows what God told them. God, that the prophecy in Genesis 25. He knows that. He is defying and disobedient of God. That's the number one wrong. Rebellion is sin. Disobedience is rebellion. It's sin. And here you go. Not only does Isaac defy God, he gives the blessing he gives to Jacob in 27 is so all-encompassing that by his own admission, there's nothing left. There's nothing left to give. I thought I was giving it to Esau, so there was nothing left for Jacob. So he is like, and I'm going to make doubly sure this doesn't come to pass. We see that Isaac is driven by his appetites and his desire for Esau's gain. And what's intriguing is that as you read it, it's a pretty private affair. Because you know the easiest way to have revealed that deception is to have another person in the room who could see and go, that's not Jacob, that's not Esau, that's Jacob wearing some goat skin. These blessings were public affairs. We will see in Genesis 29 when Jacob blesses all his sons. It was a public affair. It was a sort of a ceremony. It was a big deal. And Isaac is being secretive. And then we are told from the beginning, and there's this play, Isaac cannot see. He cannot see, but the author is playing around with words that imply see, like words like behold me, and where are you, behold, behold. So there's this whole playing on seeing, but the truth is, Isaac is spiritually blind. In his disobedience to God's command, he becomes spiritually. And as I said, what we see is that the test that Abraham passed at Mount Moriah, Isaac fails. This was as much of a test for Isaac as Mount Moriah was for Abraham. Unfortunately, Isaac does not pass this. Okay, so that's Isaac. Messed up character number 2. We are told that Rebecca overheard. She overhears a lot in this story. She overhears this, and she overhears Esau's plotting. I mean, so here we have, honestly, the family is so distrustful of each other that we're hanging around spying. I say eavesdropping, but Rebecca is distrustful of Isaac, her husband. And so she's got her spies watching Esau's servant. She's watching out for Isaac. What is going on? So that's Rebecca. And here we go. Rebecca, I think, is a little miffed about this, because when we read about it, this game that Isaac loves, and he loves so much. By the way, it's the only time in the Bible the word love is used to apply to an inanimate object. You love people. You love God. You don't love a bowl of stew. Rebecca was able to duplicate this with a goat and some spices, and she knew it. So that becomes what we see in the story. It's like, oh yeah, just don't worry, I can make the stew. The stew that causes your father to love your brother so much, I can do that. Don't worry. So I think Rebecca's a little bit irritated, because there's more going on here than just the food. Rebecca moves to orchestrate this. I mean, she is the key primary agent of this deception. Jacob goes along with it quite happily, but Rebekah works to supplant and deceive her husband. She's also happy to chop Esau out of the game. The consequences on Rebekah are actually greater than I think any of the other three characters. Rebekah disappears. She disappears from the narrative. I think later on, when at the very end of Genesis, it's like, yeah, take me back to the tomb where Abraham and Sarah and my father Isaac and Rebekah and Leah are all buried. Go bury me with them. And that's the only other time she gets a mention. She disappears because of this. She has been, and she has been so active for the son she loves, he will leave and she will never see him again. There are consequences for this. I ran across a great quote in a book that I will bring probably next week and talk about briefly, the full class. This is from the book called God's Rascal, the Jacob narrative in Genesis 25 through 34. We can summarize Rebekah's approach as action eclipses faith. Not to be unkind, but she is an idolatrous activist. She cannot wait and let God sort things out. She must intervene and put things right. And when I first read this, I kind of put ouch in the margin. Rebekah is the patron saint of all who serve a helpless God who has no hands but our hands and no resources but our schemes. She does not simply broach the promise issue with Isaac and leave it in Yahweh's hand. Rather, she seeks to manipulate and deceive. We think we must help God out because he is not adequate to care for his own God. There's a little bit of Rebekah in all of us. Well, certainly in me. I suspect in all of us. And it's where it's like, God, you said this, and and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we don't co-labor with God. We are to co-labor with God. He invites us in to working with him. But there's this times where we kind of get ahead of God. And we're like, God, you're not going fast enough. You're not doing it right. Oh, look, it could fail miserably. Do not go into clearly immoral means to achieve God's ends. You've tainted God's plans. And as I said, there are consequences. Okay, our number 3 character in this, young Jacob. See, he actually sees no problem deceiving his father whatsoever. His only worry in the whole thing is that he'll get caught in the act, and instead of being blessed, he'll get cursed. And that's in 25:12. He lies about his identity. He says, oh no, I'm not Jacob, I'm Esau, even though I sound just like Jacob. I got a little tickle in my throat. It caused my voice to change. See, I feel like him. I've got the fur. I smell like him. I've borrowed his clothes. Rebekah gives him Esau's clothes, so he'll smell like him. Because I'm sure they didn't have really good laundry soap. Trust me. Jacob lies about God. Did he catch that the first time? Isaac goes, why are you back so fast? Jacob goes, oh, your God. He looked after me. Your God took care of it. I mean, what's the exact quote? It's actually quite shocking. In verse 20, but Isaac said to his son, how is it that you have found it so quickly, my son? He answered, because the Lord your God granted me success. Yeah. Isaac shows no remorse or repentance. Now, one of the things, and I skipped over it a little bit, but it is in the workbook, the fact that Genesis 26, where Isaac presents Rebekah as his sister to Abimelech, Jacob and Esau were alive. They're not mentioned in the story, they're not important in the story. But if you do the math, they were alive. This didn't happen It happened when they were alive. Some scholars say, oh, well, surely Abimelech would have noticed these two 15-year-old boys running around. And I go, kind of what I think happened is that they actually, worse yet, Isaac said, they're my sons, they're not her sons. Sons by my wife who died, or he sent them off to the fields so they wouldn't be seen. He actually, I think it's implied. I can't see a world where they weren't alive. And they would have seen. You know how you get what you want in this world? You deceive, and you lie, and you manipulate, and you scheme. Esau gets mad at Jacob for it. The truth be told, Esau's just not as good at it. Esau's so driven by his appetites that he can't work in his schemes. He's an impulsive man, and schemers are not impulsive, as we know. And then what's wrong part Esau? Number one, Esau is not the victim. Don't be sorry for Esau. Remember, for a bowl of stew, or a bowl of lentil stew, when he wasn't dying, he was just really hungry. It'd been a long day, he was tired, he wanted his evening meal. Maybe even a couple days, but these people would have had food. He loses the blessing, and what's interesting is that he trades away the birthright for stew, and he loses the blessing over manipulated game, probably even a game stew. Esau thought he could treat the birthright casually and still get the blessing, and he was wrong. They are different, but they are connected. And Esau was very happy to go along with Isaac to get the blessing. Again, Esau knew that passage in Genesis 25. He was very happy to get the blessing. So nobody is a moral exemplar in this story. Now, the great thing about all of this, though, is every single one of them is loved by God. As we talked about, Isaac gets referred to as the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. Jacob for all of his flaws. Esau becomes a great nation, and he's still blessed by God. The Edomites become, again, a powerful nation. Most scholars will note that Herod was half Edomite. So they weren't nothing. Jacob, as we know, I think a rascal and a scoundrel is the best way to describe it. But from him becomes nation Israel. And we clearly see God's hand and his blessing on him. So let's move to 28. Genesis 28, 1 through 5. Then Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and directed him. First thing, you must not take a wife from the Canaanite women. Arise and go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and take as your wife from there one of the daughters of Laban. So again, Jacob went knowing what his mission was. He had two missions. The mission between him and mom, don't let Esau kill me. The mission between him and dad, get a wife. One of my cousins, probably. I have to look at the family tree. He got them both. God Almighty, and here we go. God Almighty, El Shaddai, bless you and make you fruitful and multiply you, that you may become a company of peoples. May he give you the blessing of Abraham to you, and to your offspring with you, that you may take possession of the land of your sojournings that God gave Abraham. That's the blessing.
So what is that scripture, excuse me?
It is Genesis 28, 1 through 5. And I believe this is the real blessing. This is given publicly, it is given freely, and it is given without any deceit whatsoever. It's not as long or as complicated, but it hit the key thing in here. May he, El Shaddai, give the blessing of Abraham to you and to your offspring. That's the blessing. Offspring, the blessing of Abraham, offspring, and the land. So Isaac just very simply is saying, every promise God made, every blessing God made with Abraham, may God give that. And then, in one of the most well-known stories, and he came to a certain place and stayed there at night. And in the study, I note how long it's a couple days. I think it's 3 days, three or 4 days from where Isaac is in Beersheba to Bethel. And he came to a certain place and stayed there that night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones in place, he put it under his head and lay down on that place to sleep. And he dreamed. And behold, there was a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. As I mentioned in the study, this is likely not a ladder like we see a ladder, but a staircase or a ramp, which makes more sense than people of angels going up and down on it, kind of simultaneously. This becomes something that Jesus actually will pick up on in John 1:51. If you want me to read it, I could. It's when he meets Nathanael, and what's really interesting is when he meets Nathanael, and when he first sees Nathanael, he goes, "Oh, behold, an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." So there's already a play, because Jacob, Israel, is known as a heel grabber, a deceiver. And Nathanael said, "How do you know me?" And then he talks about the fig tree, and then Jesus says, and Nathanael's like, "Oh my gosh, you are the Son of God." And he goes, "No, but I say to you, you will see heaven." This is Jesus now. And he said to him, "Truly, truly, I say to you, you will see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man." So this no deceit. Immediately an Israelite's going to go, "Oh, we know an Israelite who was known for deceit. That's Papa Jacob." And this story here. And in the Greek, it's almost the exact same phrases. There's some things with tense different, but it's the same. So again, they would have clued in, this is what is going on. So he's here, these angels there. It's basically what we're seeing, and then God will appear. And we talk about this as an open heaven. It is this place where angelic messengers are coming back and forth. It is a connection point between heaven and earth. And so when Jesus makes this reference to it, he's saying, they're going to ascend and descend on me. Jesus becomes the connection point between us and God. That's what Jesus came to do, was to restore our connection to God. And that is how we connect in the way God intended us, is through Jesus. All right, so I'm going to talk about now this idea of the God who blesses. Because what happens after this encounter in Genesis 28 is that God then proceeds to bless. So let's first start and thinking about what are some of these, the blessings that Isaac said, the blessings of Abraham. If you recall, the blessings of Abraham, they play out over several passages.
Let me turn it off.
No, don't. I have a plan.
Oh.
A plan that will work. I have one of these little magnetic things, and that will do the job. Because I'm not going to stay here long. This is a hint. You're going to want to get those pieces of paper ready. Now, so if you go to Genesis, but first go to Genesis 12. 1 through 3. When God first calls Abraham, at the time he's called Abram, first calls him out of Haran. He says, "Now the Lord said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land I will show you. And here's the promise. And I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse, and in you all families of the earth will be blessed. This core blessing becomes an important idea for the concept of the Israelites through the whole Old Testament coming into the New Testament, and is realized in Jesus. But we also, this when we think about, this is the beginning of what is the promise. The blessings of Abraham. Well, here's the blessing. God bless you, make your name great. You will be a blessing. Blessed, and I will bless those who bless you and curse you, those who dishonor you. So let's look at now this blessing that God gives to Jacob, and look at comparison through some of the other blessings. So I'll compare it to the blessing of Isaac in 26, and mainly to the blessing given to Abraham in 15. But we want to hold this 12, 1 through 3 kind of in our mind as we look at this. So, each of these blessings, there's an event that leads into them. The blessings of God tend not to happen randomly. Now, so there's something that's the lead-in. In Genesis 15, and 15 is where God makes covenant with Abraham, there's the blessing by Melchizedek, where Melchizedek says, "Blessed be Abraham by God Most High." With Isaac, it's not as clear. There isn't a blessing, but what he does is he redigs Abraham's wells. So Isaac is actually going out, and he is opening up wells. And in a desert place, what could be a better blessing than water? And then as we get the lead in going into this is where we have what Isaac did in the beginning of 28. May he, God, give the blessing of Abraham to you. There are the locations, we don't know where the blessing that God, the covenant was made in 15. With Isaac, it was in Beersheba. And here with Jacob, it's in Bethel. So the first thing we read, and we read about this, there's the dream. We just talked about it. So that's a unique encounter. That's whereas the other two narratives were talking God appeared and God said, we don't have this visual that's happening with the others that happens with Jacob. So that's a distinct. But I'm trying to line these up side by side. So if there's blanks in some, that means it didn't occur. And there you have then the first thing. After these things, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. That's with Abraham. And the Lord appeared to him in the same night and said, and behold, the Lord stood above it. Then this is the staircase. And said, in these, God himself appears. He appears and he speaks. He came in a vision, he appeared, he stood above it. So in all of these blessings, that this is undeniably God. God appears. And the first thing then that God says in this is he introduces himself. He steps into relationship. This is who I am. Abram, I'm the God who brought you out of Ur from the Chaldeans. Isaac, I'm the God of Abraham your father. Jacob, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac. Isaac, for all of his flaws, God doesn't ditch him. There is no specific land offspring one to Isaac, but God goes, to you, I give to you this land to possess. It gets repeated. Again, the blessing of Abraham, the land on which you lie, I will give to you and your offspring. Next, we see that with Jacob, your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad to the west, to the east, to the north, and the south. Well, For Abraham, he said, he brought him outside, look towards heaven and number the stars if you were able to number them. Again, the reference there is the offspring. With Isaac, he says, fear not, for I am with you and will bless you and multiply your offspring for my servant Abraham's sake. With Jacob, it's, and in you and your offspring shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Well, that pulls more on the Genesis 12 point. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse, and in you all families of the earth will be blessed. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? What did Isaac say? May God Almighty bless you with the blessing of Abraham, and God shows up and does that. Next verse. I didn't update this. Fear not, Abram, I am your shield, your reward shall be very great. Fear not, for I am with you and will bless you. Behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go and will bring you back to this land. So in all encounters, there is this, and it isn't just I'm afraid because I'm talking to God. It's there is something in these men where they are concerned and worried and fearful, and God, you know, Abraham was, I just knocked off these 4 kings, they're going to come back and slaughter me next year. And Isaac has just, oh my gosh, I've just redug the wells, and we've got a peace treaty, but I don't know how long it'll last. We know how long peace treaties don't last in the Middle East. And Jacob is, I'm running from my brother. Will he come behind me and kill me? Will I even get to Haran? I don't know. I'm a little nervous right now. And so the first thing God does in this encounter is say, I got this. I got you. An encounter with God, first and foremost, should bring you peace. If your worry doesn't drop down, if your peace meter doesn't go off the charts, well, maybe it's not God. I don't know. But God is there. The first thing he does is he comforts. I'm God, fear not. I'm God, fear not. And then, this is a specific promise that we see to Jacob. For I will not leave you till I have done what I promised. Don't worry, I've got you, and I'm not leaving you. I'm here now, I was here before, and until I live up to what I promised to do, I'm not leaving you. That's a good promise. I'll take that. I'd take that blessing any day. And then the response. So Jacob, we see, takes the stone, puts it that he was sleeping on, and he stands it up and he pours oil on it. He consecrates it. When you pour oil on something, you are consecrating it. And he called the name of that place Bethel. And Jacob does the same thing. So after his encounter with God, he builds an altar and he calls upon the name of the Lord. And he says, I'm here. I don't want to leave God. I am in Beersheba. I'm not leaving. And we find that's where Isaac camps. And then we see with Abraham, on that day the Lord made covenant with Abraham, and we see in 12, that was 15, but we see in 12, 7 through 8, and the Lord appeared to Abraham, to your offspring I will give this land, and Abraham's response, he built an altar to the Lord. From there he moved to the hill country, so we don't know where he was, but he moved to the country east of Bethel and pitched his tent there. And there he built an altar to the Lord, and he called upon the name of the Lord. There is this point where this encounter from God moves you to worship. And then we come in, and Jacob woke from his sleep and said, surely the Lord is in my place, and I did not know that. And that alone will preach. And he was afraid and said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. Jacob is changed by his encounter. An encounter with God, the holy God, changes who we are. And in this then, he does the only thing, he sets up the pillar, calls upon the name of God. But the next thing, so we see him doing that, And then we see the end of 28, Jacob's response. Jacob made a vow. Now, I'll talk a little bit about a vow later. If God will be with me and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, so that I can come again to, you notice he kind of added to it, give me bread and clothes. Don't want to be hungry and naked. So that I can come again to my father's house in peace. I just want to come home. Jacob was a man, a quiet man who dwelt in the tents. Jacob liked to hang around home. He was a homebody. Just bring me home, Lord. Bring me home. Then the Lord shall be my God, and this stone which I have set up for a pillar shall be God's house. And of all that you give me, I will give a full tenth to you. So those of you who say tithing is Old Covenant, well, there is no Old Covenant yet. That doesn't occur until the middle of Exodus. This is not conditional. Because we typically do not understand the nature of vows, we see this simply as Jacob's making a deal. Oh, you promised me this, and if you do that, then I'll do this. And that is certainly a way to do this. But if you read, if you've read the story of Hannah in the book of Samuel, the vow she gives isn't conditional. It's like, God, what you're giving is so good, and you do this, and I'm your servant forever. It's not a conditional response. It's a vow. It's heartfelt. God makes promises to Israel, to Jacob, and in response, Israel makes vows to God. Vows are not contracts or limited agreements, but yieldings that reorient your life. And this is from Walter Brueggemann. They reorient your life. Vows are serious. They are meaningful. But there's this reorientation that occurs. I have used it the whole hour. We see that when God appears, things change. Seek God because God will change things. But what he's going to change is not your circumstances. What he will change is you. And that internal change that the encounter with God makes, it leads to a response from you. Maybe not a vow. I'm cautious with vows. But there's this heart drawing in.